Hey guys, welcome back to the garage. If you're new here, my name is Casey. Welcome to the channel. This is my 2022 F350 Super Duty with a 6.7 Powerstroke engine. And as you can see in front of you, we got a bunch of products that we're going to be installing on this truck today. Full disclosure, none of these brands that you see are sponsors of this video. None of them even know that I exist. I've paid full price for these products. I just believe that at the time of this recording of this video and for this specific year of truck, that these are the best products that are available currently on the market for what I'm looking to achieve with this build. So a little bit of some context, I solely use this vehicle for off-road purposes and camping, mostly camping in the mountains, but also chasing Dakar through Saudi Arabia or participating in the Baja Challenges through the empty quarter here in UAE. So its primary use is off-road, and I push the vehicle quite hard in those scenarios, and I really need to get home at the end of the day. So any kind of modifications that I do to the truck are solely with the intention of reliability. And I'm not chasing after horsepower numbers and things like this. If they do have a performance benefit to them, that's just by coincidence, but my main purpose is to make sure that this truck can get me home and get me out of the desert, as sometimes I am out there quite remotely solo, and there's nothing worse than a 5-ton truck breaking down in the middle of the dunes. So if you know me and you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I've had some issues with my DPF system in the past. Where I got stranded out in Salalah and had to send the vehicle back by recovery and take a flight home. I really want to prevent that from happening again, so I'm trying to remove any kind of scenario where that could be a possibility. And that does mean having the vehicle tuned to remove the emission system for the DPF as well as the EGR. Now, whether you choose to do that is completely up to you. All of the products that you'll be seeing in this video will still work with the emission systems on. I made sure that everything I'm doing is just a direct replacement for the OEM part, so everything will plug directly into all of the products you see here. And you don't need to do every single one of these modifications. If you want to just pick and choose one of the items, or if you do want to do them all, that's great, but each one of these things can be done independently of the other. And I'll explain in this video the reasons why I am doing the modification and why you might want to consider doing it as well for your vehicle. In this video, I'm not going to go too much into detail as to the actual installation step-by-step process for these products, as there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube that cover that already, and they're very well documented. If I did do that, the video would be quite long, so I'm going to just kind of show a couple of the highlights of the installation process, and I'll definitely compare the original product to the newer product so you can see the actual difference between the two. With that being said, down below I'm going to be putting all of the timeline where you can skip ahead to the area that interests you if you want to just see a specific part of the installation. I hope you find this video interesting. If you do, please consider subscribing and giving the video a like. It lets me know that you're interested to see more of these type of videos in the future. All right, so without further delay, I'm going to go get changed into the coveralls, and then we're going to get started on this build. So to bring you up to speed as where we are with the tune of this vehicle now, I have contacted a company called Dirty Diesel Customs out of Canada, and they have supplied me with AMDP's EasyLink tune file and OBD2 connector. And what's fantastic about AMDP is they're one of the leading companies when it comes to tuning the newer vehicles like this 2022 Super Duty. And they're progressing so fast. It's been only maybe 6 months since they have released the new update where you can actually flash the OBD2 port and the ECM in order to load the tune files. Previously, you had to either go directly to the ECM in the engine compartment, or you had to ship an ECU out to them where they would bench flash it and then ship it back. But literally in just a matter of months, they've progressed so quickly to start offering this new way of bench flashing the vehicle. If you did want to do a performance tune where you had more horsepower and things like that, that does require them to still bench flash at this time. But I'm hopeful that they'll continue to develop further and find a way to be able to load those bench files directly through the OBD port. If you have an older vehicle like a 2021 or older, there's a lot more options available to you, and you don't necessarily need to send the ECU out. But then again, at the time of recording this video, currently this is the best process. Again, the tune is completely optional. You don't need to do it if you don't want to do it at this time. But if you do choose to do the emissions delete tune, that entails deleting the DPF as well as the EGR. I would still recommend that you contact them and specify exactly what you're looking to achieve. as there was, full transparency, there was a bit of some confusion there as to the website, as the website dictates that you need to leave the EGR in place and plugged in order to do the delete tune. However, actually, when I spoke to the representatives over there, especially Devin in tuning, he's been an absolutely fantastic human being when it comes to answering all of my questions. As you can imagine, I've obviously asked him hours and hours worth of questions, and he's actually gone back to AMDP and confirmed that I can actually remove the EGR on the vehicle and put block off plates. And to me, that was important because I really don't want a chunk of metal that has coolant and everything flowing through it, relying on a plastic valve to keep the engine recirculating gases from entering back into my intake manifold. If it's disabled, I want it removed, basically. Any point of failure to me is a liability. So AMDP, as I mentioned, are using this OBD2 flash where you can plug it directly in and load the files directly onto it. So I've gone ahead and done that. It only takes about 5 minutes to both the engine as well as the transmission. And if you are doing this tune, I strongly recommend that you look at doing the transmission tunes as well. It increases line pressure and prevents the clutch plates from slipping. And it's perfect for heavy duty use or if you're towing. And they also have an option to have raised shift points, which will cause the transmission to behave more like a factory transmission if you have larger tires like I do. So after I've loaded the tune files onto the truck, I have removed the DPF system and I've replaced it with a 4-inch pipe that Dirty Diesel Custom supplies. And something that is important to note, in Dirty Diesel Custom's instructions, they say to shift the entire rear section of the exhaust back a few inches in order to fit the replacement that they supply. However, I found that there's really no room to shift the exhaust back, especially if you're running like I am a 37 in the spare space. You do have a little bit of space to move it, but if you need to move it as much as you do in order to get the actual exhaust in place, it will be coming off the spring hangers in the rear. So it's important to note that this distance here, there's just not that much space available underneath the truck in order to shift the factory rear section of the exhaust back to fit that mid pipe that they supply. So what I ended up doing is just taking, I have a chop saw, and I just cut off the exact amount that I needed after measuring so that the pipes can slide one into the other, and then the band clip that they supply can go over and clamp the new exhaust on. So now I have no issues with fitment. The rear section of the exhaust is where the factory location was. It's not changed. The front section from where the downpipe meets is also in its factory location, and the pipe fits perfectly. Once I installed the new pipes, I used these electrical block-off plugs that Dirty Diesel Custom supplies as well, so that no water or dirt or anything can get up into the connections that were there, because I still left the connections on the underside of the truck in case that I wanted to swap this back in the future. They're still there. I didn't cut any wires or anything like that. All of the factory harnesses and everything are still in place, and all the plugs that are related to the sensors and things like that have all been plugged off, and these plugs are for the EGR and everything on the inside of the engine bay. So from this step, we're going to go ahead and jump into the engine bay, and we're going to start removing some of the components in there so that we can prepare to install our disaster prevention kit from S&S Diesel. All right, so I've gone ahead and disconnected both batteries, put a little cardboard so they don't get in contact. I've already started to remove the upper intake pipe and the original filter, and I've started to install the Banks filter tray here. And now I'm pretty much done with this area, other than moving some of these coolant lines and vacuum lines out of the way, which I'll do in a minute. But now I'm going to focus over here on this area. So my primary goal is to get the disaster prevention kit put on, which is going to sit right up here against the firewall. And in order to actually have that installed, I need to get access to the top of the fuel pump. And to get access to the fuel pump, well, I need to remove the upper fuel filter, which I'm going to be replacing with the Fleece upper fuel filter, the CCV box, which I think is already kind of at its end of this one's life, so it needs to be replaced. But instead of doing the CCV Reroute, so I'll be removing that and putting block off plates. I need to remove the charge pipes, which I have replacements for as well. I need to also remove the intake manifold so that I can access the fuel pump. My EGR pipes as well need to come off so that I can remove this intake manifold. And since I'm going to be removing the EGR at that stage as well, I'll take that out. I'm going to put some penetrating oil on these bolts. I really don't want to snap them. I've already snapped 2 bolts on the exhaust. So that's saying a lot for 2022. I really don't want to be snapping bolts. So I'm going to put some penetrant oil on these. I'm going to start cooling my main and secondary radiator tanks. Because this EGR holds some coolant and I don't want that coolant spilling everywhere. There's nothing worse than an engine that smells like coolant, and you can always tell an engine had a blown radiator or something when it smells like coolant. Yeah, there's the hot charge. There's the other one, so let's head over to the bench. So this is the throttle. I've already removed it and cleaned it once when I was doing an inspection, so it's not that dirty, but I'll still clean it again before I reinstall it. But you can see here, this is the charged air pipe. There's a little O-ring inside of it, and you can see it's quite oily in there. I will need to twist and remove this sensor plug and replace it into the new one. However, you can see I've already taped up this charged air pipe. It's very common for these to get hot. The tubes start to get a bit weak, and then they burst because they're under pressure. And when these burst, then you're pretty much dead in the water. So it's important to upgrade one of these. Either keep a spare with you, or upgrade to what like I have, which is already an aluminum, I think, or stainless steel version of it. And you can see this one's okay. You don't really need to replace these, but a wider diameter is always helpful for better airflow. These upper intake manifolds have plastic sleeves on the bolts, so be careful when you're removing it. You kind of forgot the tab, Casey. That's one way of doing it, I guess. Go. All right. There's the lower intake manifold and the upper intake manifold. Now, these bolts in the back were extremely difficult to get to, and I've tried everything that I could to get it out. So the only way that I was able to actually get the bolts out, no matter what I tried, was a combination of an extension and this specific wobble wheel or wobble socket type attachment. I've tried this type and this type. They just have too much articulation. There's 3 points of axes here, and every time you just can't get the torque on the wrench. So I've had to use just this wobble swivel type socket. I think they're called swivel sockets, in the 1/4 size, and a long extension, and either an 8 milli for the rear or a 10 deep to get the sensor bolt off that I pointed out earlier. So I highly suggest that you get one of these if you're going to look at doing this intake manifold, as that's a part that I would consider to be crucial to getting this intake manifold off. So as I mentioned, this is the lower intake manifold. This part here will connect to your vehicle's intake, and then the turbo connects here on this bracket here. And then this is the new lower intake manifold. So you can see the difference there, not only in size, airflow, there's not too much of a difference. It is a little bit shorter. And then this is where your CCV would attach. And likewise, the CCV, which I'm rerouting, would attach here originally, but I'm just capping that off as there's no crankcase ventilation returning to my intake. So I just want to take a second to show you guys the difference between your factory intake manifold and this one from Pusher. So like I mentioned, everything that I'm doing to this truck is for reliability purposes and improvements overall. So your factory intake manifold is very restrictive. It puts a lot of strain on the engine's intake because it has this attachment here where your EGR hot pipe comes. So your engine gas recirculation comes in from here. And then you see on this side is where your throttle body would be, your valve. So the fresh air is coming in from this side, and it has to go in where there's a bit of some cast material blocking the airflow. The airflow has to go down, mix in with that EGR gas, come around this bend, and then up through this upper part of the tube, and then down this horn area into the intake for the cylinder head. So it's quite restrictive, and it's a bit heavy, but it's definitely really restrictive airflow. Compared to this one from Pusher, where it is no obstruction, straight through, and just comes straight down this horn and goes right into the intake manifold, or into the cylinder head, sorry. The top of this one has the ports for your MAP air pressure sensor, and the air pressure sensor on this one is just slightly moved off to the side. Those are the same size and everything, and you have all the attachments for it. And if you did want to keep your vehicle intact and still have your EGR gases flowing into your intake, I've blocked mine off, but you can still have that attached to this port. So this, like I said, is if you live in the States, it's a 50-state compliant intake manifold, so it's fully legal in the US. And you know, again, take that for what it is, depending on where you live and what your regulations are. So if you are, you know, not wanting to modify the vehicle, or you're concerned about that type of modification, then this could still be a suitable solution for you. So one last thing that I want to mention before we continue with removing items. On your factory intake manifold, you have two locations that your oil dipstick will mount to. And unfortunately, on the Pusher system, you only have the one place for the mounting of the oil dipstick. So the other one will potentially come in contact with the pipe here. So what a lot of people will do is cut off that tab. I'm going to try to remove the actual dipstick, as it's only an O-ring, I believe, that is pressed into the engine block. So I'll try to remove the whole thing and then cut that tab off outside the vehicle so nothing can get dropped down into the cylinder heads. And then after that, do a little touch-up paint on the end of the dipstick tube, and then reinstall it. And then from there, I think the next step is going to be removing the CCV, and then we'll get down to where the fuel pump is so that we can put the disaster prevention kit. All right, so this is the oil dipstick tube. And as I mentioned, these are the mounts that will go on your factory intake manifold. Unfortunately, this is the mount that interferes with the Pusher intake manifold. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut that off. So this, these are the only bolts that hold this dipstick tube in. There is just some O-rings, so it's easy to wiggle this out. You don't want to bend this tube or anything. A lot of people, they'll put this bolt in and then they'll just bend this out of the way. But you know, this distance and everything is very crucial to get accurate readings. So you really just need to make sure that you're pulling this out at the right angle, not, you know, straight out where you're going to bend this or anything. It needs to go in and out of the engine at that same angle. And this tip of removing this dipstick tube to cut this piece off, I heard from Aaron, or PTT A-Rod, so shout out to him for that. That was very helpful. I appreciate that. That's a great tip on removing this dipstick tube to get a nice clean cut without getting any metal shavings going down into any critical components that are currently exposed before we do install the intake manifold and everything. So without further ado, I'm going to grab a grinder and yak this thing off. Let's see here. How do I want to cut this? There we have it. So a very nice clean cut. I'll probably just take a flap disc and knock off the edge on that. And it's nice the tube and everything is very well intact, didn't nick it or anything. And then I'll just spray a little clear black paint over that, let it dry, and then tomorrow morning I will install this back in, and then we can get on with the rest of the project. Okay, so this is the CCV box, or crankcase ventilation. And I have it on its side because the bottom here is open, where the oil would then drain back into the engine head. And what it does is exactly as the name entails. It's crankcase ventilation. So any of the blow-by through your cylinders or pressure in your head will go through this medium filter in here and be circulated back to the intake manifold. Unfortunately, sometimes these boxes will swell because they get overloaded with oil, depending on how much or how long you idle and things like that. And they do have a certain lifespan in them where you'll need to replace them. I don't know the exact mileage that you're supposed to replace them at. It might be around 100,000 or 80,000. I'm not exactly sure, so don't quote me, but they do have a time period that you need to replace them. So for me, I didn't really want to introduce any oil vapors, as that's what really gets the intake manifold that you saw earlier clogged up. With that dry, sooty smoke that's coming from the EGR, it will mix with this really sticky, oily vapor, and that's what really starts to get gunky and bind up on everything, your turbo vanes and all, coating all of your intake lines and stuff. So nasty stuff. If you can separate the oil from the air, that is the best way to do it. So a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll buy catch cans, oil catch cans, and those are great. If you get a good quality brand one and things like that. Sometimes people will go for a cheaper one, and you often will forget to drain them, and then that defeats the whole purpose. Then you have high pressure inside of your head. Or some instances, I've seen people online where they say that they just don't work. They actually install it and test it, and it actually creates pressure itself. So I checked a lot of forums before I made the decision which one to go with, and I ultimately decided to go with SPE. I think that they make a very good product and have a proven track record with Super Duty owners on their CCV Reroute. And the way that theirs works is they actually have an internal catch can. So this actually will sit inside of the head on the top of the engine block, and all the vapors and everything coming out from the top, they will all collect on this grate and drip down. So you're not having to empty an oil catch can. And then there's a bunch of O-rings in here. You'll have an O-ring in there, and that will attach on top of it. And then you have your piping that will go on top of that. And then that will reroute down to the chassis frame underneath the vehicle. Some people complain that they can smell, obviously, some odors of the vapor coming around the cab area because it's ventilating just beneath your door and stuff. So what I've done is you get the standard, I think this is about 1 meter, 1 or 2 meter length, And then I went and bought an extension one as well that will plug into that, and then just route it further down the frame rail towards the rear of the vehicle to get the odors and stuff as far back as possible. Some people will actually route this all the way into part of their engine, or sorry, not the engine, part of their exhaust system. So they're hoping that all the ventilation, smells, and everything go into the exhaust. However, I've seen mixed reviews on that actually working. Some people say it actually creates a vacuum because it's pulling air through the pipe rather than just letting it ventilate naturally. And then some people even put a catch can down at that end to try to catch the vapor and stuff, because it is just venting to atmosphere. However, that also can increase pressure because you're, restricting airflow from its natural ventilation. So I'm going to just see how it goes and let it vent. I don't think it will bother me too much. As it is right now, I don't smell any odors from the exhaust without the DPF. So likely I won't smell anything either. I usually drive with my windows up anyways because it's quite hot in this environment where I am. So I don't think I'll be too bothered with it, but we'll see how it goes. Until then, I think this is the best solution to remove any oil vapors from entering your intake manifold. Oh, jeez. So this is the EGR. This is the front of the engine here. This is towards the firewall. And you have to be careful when you're removing this because it does hold quite a bit of water and it is quite heavy as well. And once you delete the truck, the EGR is disabled, but you're relying on the plastic valves and actuators to keep the door shut from the gas to recirculate to the intake manifold. So, if it's disabled, it's just a point of failure with, the cooling flowing through it and things like that, where it's just better to remove it and put a block off plate there in its place. So that's the reason really why I went ahead with removing it. Some people choose to leave it there. That's up to you. Ultimately, having it removed from the vehicle allows you to free up a lot of space in the engine bay, and you can always return it later if you need to return it later, but it's nice to keep it in storage and out of the vehicle if it's not in use, in my opinion. So now what I'm going to be focusing on is just putting on the block off plates from Dirty Diesel Customs. So at the time of making this video, currently the 2022s don't have the option to use the factory EGT probe. Unfortunately, the communications through the CAN bus to the ECM is not functioning at this time. Hopefully, with some future updates, AMDP may enable that option, as they have done so with the 2021s and 2020s and older vehicles. The 2022s are still so relatively new that it's quite difficult for them to come out with some updates and additional features, but that doesn't mean down the line that they won't have those options available to you. But as of the time of recording this video, these options aren't available. So me personally, I really want to monitor my EGTs. You don't really need to if you're just doing a 0 horsepower, just a stock emissions off tune. But it's beneficial if you are pushing your truck quite hard, doing a lot of heavy towing, or in my case, quite heavy off-road use. It's beneficial to be able to just take a glance and look at your EGTs to make sure that your exhaust temperatures are not getting too high, peaking above 1300 for extended periods of time. You can spike there, but you don't want to sustain temperatures like that because you can end up doing a lot of internal damage to the engine. So Banks have a really nice product that they've brought to the market a long time ago, is their iDash, which is a really nice little monitor that you can put on a little A-pillar pod right on the handle, grab handle for the A-pillar. And this iDash connects to this module that they have. It's a 4-channel thermocoupler, and this will allow you to connect to a third-party temp sensor. So I have an EGT Probe here, and that sensor. So this whole system will allow me to monitor my EGTs completely independent of the truck's ECM system. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to install all this now. I'm just installing the Dirty Diesel Customs block off plates at the moment. So this one will go into one of the block off plates that they've supplied. So I'll install that, but I'll just leave it aside until everything else is mostly done. I just need to work on doing the disaster prevention kit now. And after that, it's all installing new stuff from that point forward. So I'll start to wire this stuff up as well, and then we'll take it from there. So this is the disaster prevention kit from S&S Diesel Motorsports. The 6.7 Powerstroke has a CP4 fuel pump, and if you are familiar with Cummins and Duramax, they also had them for a while. It's a very common fuel pump in the industry, but the way that the fuel pump works is that it cools itself using the fuel, and it has a pickup at the bottom of the fuel pump. And if there's any kind of shavings or wear from the internal bearings and stuff, the motor, it will pick up those little metal shavings and then push it through the fuel lines, and then it will clog your injectors, and it's just a very expensive repair order. So what a lot of people do is either do a DCR conversion, which is quite expensive, and at the time, actually 2 years now, when I bought this kit, that wasn't available yet. So I have the disaster prevention kit, but as mentioned, I haven't installed it yet because in order to install it, you have to take off the intake manifold, you have to take off the upper fuel filter, you have to take off the CCV and the charge pipes, so all the stuff that I'm already doing anyways. That's why I put it off until this time. So it's very simple, obviously, just a screw-on filter, and this filter will catch any of the debris that is coming from that pump before it goes into your lines. And what I need to do now is actually get on the truck and remove the screen that's on the top of the fuel pump. I'm going to inspect that, make sure there's no fine shavings or anything. And then this will place inside of that screen, and then the screen will then be placed on here. It reroutes it, and then comes in and goes to the rest of the line. So, all right. Well, apologies for the cramped location here. I'm trying to film this alone, and I'm not having much luck. This is the moment of truth on if there's any glitter or contamination. It's looking pretty clear to me. I'll have to have a look down inside as well. Yeah. Looks pretty good in there as well. Finally. Successful. That was successful. We got 1, 2, and 3. Is it gonna be this way or the other way? I think it's the other way. So this is your factory upper fuel filter cup. It sits in the truck, and this is your upper fuel filter. And it locks into place just like so. And then you have your high pressure fuel connections here, which you just saw me install for the Disaster Prevention Kit. So the problems with this is that this is the updated part number, but for the older fuel filters, which are still in circulation, are known to fail. They have an injection molding point here, and when they fail, fuel will spray out. So sometimes you'll see videos of trucks that are caught on fire. They're most likely caused from a defective fuel filter. And this part number is updated, you can tell by this little bit extra reinforcement in the PE plastic that they've used in the injection molding. And you know, I don't think there's any videos of anybody having any problems with these filters yet, but it's extremely hot where I am in the Middle East and everything, so I really don't want to rely on a plastic filter. And in addition to that, I like to check all of my filters, like my oil. You'll see here, I have an oil filter, and I use one of these filter cutters, and I like to cut open my oil filters and inspect all of the pleats and see if there's any debris or anything in my oil. And that is part of the reason why I have gone with Fleece for their upper fuel filter, which replaces a standard fuel filter, and it uses these Donaldson fuel filters. And I can find these on Amazon and have them delivered to me rather than having to go to a dealer or a parts department and should try to track down these fuel filters. Like I said, my truck is not common in this country, so they do have them here, but parts are quite hard to come by, and usually the dealer are the only ones that have a lot of the parts. So that's at least a 2-week wait for me to get a fuel filter, maybe even longer. One time it took me a month to get one of these filters. So anything that I can do to be a little bit more self-reliant and not need to go to the dealer is better for me. And this solution is great because it will just key directly into your stock filter cup as well and lock in. And yeah, there's a little locking pin here. So you drop it in, and then it locks in place and then still connects to your standard high pressure lines. And this one has a replacement for the newer trucks like mine, and you're good to go. So, and then I can still, you know, use the cutter and cut these off and inspect the fuel, make sure that I'm not getting any glitter or anything passing through the bypass system. And I can check also my bypass filter as well, because that's also, as you've seen, a Donaldson filter, which I can then take a look at that to make sure that that's not catching any glitter. So I've got a lot of options to make sure that the truck is working as designed without having to tear into the engine and really get down to the fuel sender or anything like that. All right, so just finished installing the Banks iDash 1.8, which is their older little screen module that's on the inside of the vehicle. It's been a super long day, and of course, the last thing that I'm installing is the thing that I would mess up. So when I was drilling the hole to feed the wires through, I drilled it on the wrong mounting point, so put a little hole in my A-pillar, which is a cheap plastic piece. I can just order another one, so it's not too big of an issue. I will say I did have trouble with just the hot pipe from the turbo. I could not figure out, well actually I had trouble with both the cold side and the hot side with the pusher pipes. They're quite difficult to get on just because it was the first time that I was doing it, so I didn't realize that it's actually easier to move the or loosen the clamps around the rubber hoses to be able to push them in further and get them into the right position and then slide them further up and then clamp everything down. I had things kind of tightened where they were supposed to be, especially with where the connecting coupler is to the throttle body. But anyways, something to note is they ship you everything that you need for the pusher intake system except for the retaining clip that is on this piece, and then also your factory retaining clip on the throttle body side as well. So make sure you save the spring clips that are there. And I didn't realize that you're actually able to pop this plastic piece off and then reuse that clip. And I was hesitant to mess with this because if I broke this and maybe they missed sending me a part, I was going to be out without being able to drive the truck at all. So, I would have put this in if I had doubts. But, in their video, they say that you're supposed to use this clip, but they actually don't show it in any of the installation videos in Pusher's website. However, for a brief second, I saw that they had one of these plastic things that were broken open to remove that clip. So that gave me a hint that it is possible to remove this and use that clip. So glad that I did. And checking, I saw there's an O-ring inside of the pusher pipe, so I knew that that was a tight fit, and I didn't need another hose, because some of Pusher's pipes on their website, they have another hose that connects to the turbo side. And on this one, yeah, that's not the case. So it's a factory fit, which is fantastic. So anyways, let me take you over to the truck and I'll show you everything that was installed. And then the last thing is just to start the truck and take it for a test drive. I will say that out of everything that I've installed, there is still one more thing that is missing. And that is a bypass oil filtration system that filters down to 2 microns. AMSOIL makes a great oil bypass system. The only thing why I haven't purchased one yet is, like I mentioned, my use for this vehicle is off-road, and I'm having a hard time finding a company, either AMSOIL or whatever, or even after a third-party seller that sells accessories or AMSOIL even with their bypass filters. I couldn't find one that was a high enough mount above the chassis rails. They all kind of sat right at the level or slightly below the chassis rails. And for me, that's a bit dangerous because I often will slide over crests of dunes and things, and I don't want any of those filters snapping off. So yeah, I'm still in the market for an oil bypass filtration, and I think that that would probably be one of the top priority things out of all of the stuff that I've installed, would be an oil bypass system. So it is definitely something that I'm looking at getting into as soon as I can find one that mounts a little bit higher up on the chassis frame so it's not so exposed. If you know something or a company that does have a product like that, do let me know. Leave me a comment down below so I can check it out. I'm definitely keen to take a look at that. Okay, so just having a look at the vehicle now. I have the Banks Ram Air, sorry about that, Banks Ram Air intake there, and I have the there's a pre-filter on that as well. You can see that the EGR has been removed and some block off plates have been installed. I kind of just zip tied all of the extra wires out of the way, and they all have dummy plugs and stuff on them as well. If you can see behind there's a bit of a dummy plug so that they're not getting wet or anything like that when I go through puddles or wash the car. You can see down there I have my EGT sensor, and that wire, if you follow it, follows the wiring loom harness, there it is, and then goes all the way under, and I have it just coming up over here for the time being and wrapping over here where it's got the module for the Banks system, which is just sitting over there. I've got 3 other sensors I can plug in, but I'm only just using one for the EGT at the moment because the truck already has sensors for transmission and oil and stuff like that, so it's not too much of an issue. And then it just goes through the firewall into the cabin, which I'll show you in a bit later. And then we have the block off plates for the EGR hot pipes that go into the intake manifold. So again, you know, if you wanted to keep it stock, you can still leave your EGR on and use this intake manifold. Those bolts in the rear of this intake manifold were an absolute pain, but they're a bit easier now with this intake manifold. And I did cut the dipstick tube so that it's not touching from the second mount that mounts to the top of that intake manifold location, but it is secured by the bolt in the back, which is great. And then if you have a look, the Disaster Prevention Kit, that's your CCV actually right there, that goes back from the CCV. And the Disaster Prevention Kit, let me see if I can catch it on this video. The Disaster Prevention Kit is just located right down in here. You can see that's your fuel sender, and you can see the S&S diesel logo there for the pickup, and it goes through this tube here, which comes around underneath the hot pipe and comes to this connection junction over here, wraps around the oil, goes up to this fuel filter here, and then from that fuel filter goes into this Fleece upper fuel filter, and that one also is on the factory cup, exchangeable fuel filter. And there's the CCV delete just behind it, and if you look in the back, that is the hose for the ventilation with the catch can internally into the head, and that hose wraps up around the brake booster down along the chassis rail and to the back of the vehicle. All right, so this is the iDash here. So this is how I can monitor my EGTs when I'm driving, make sure I'm not getting too hot. And I can see all the other parameters as well and set some alarms. So I haven't messed with that yet, I just installed it. So I'm gonna be setting that up maybe tomorrow as it's getting a bit late today. But anyways, let's go ahead and start it up and make sure there's no check engine lights. She runs and sounds good. See the light came on the iDash, everything looks good. No check engine lights, no warnings of any kind. We're good to go. All right, guys, well, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Again, I hope you found it useful. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing. And if you feel like I've missed anything, do leave me a comment down below. The only thing left to do now is to take it out on the road and take it for a test drive. So I'm going to head out and do that now, and I'll see you guys in the next one.